It's Chabad.
What?
Kavim zone rather than non-kavim in this phrase.
Tisha kavim. Adam writes a kav echad shaloi, mitisha kavim shaloi. Okay, we're in Ois Tes. We're still trying to understand that which the Rebbe started to explain to us at the beginning of Ois Ches, which is a continuation of what we learned in Ois Zayin, which is often the case, that is the way things often work in life. Right? First we learned what's the advantage of the Aveda coming from below. So we said that would affect Malchus more powerfully. The below would be affected, and that was a very important idea, B'chlal, in life. Inspiration is very, very nice. It makes us feel warm and fuzzy. It generally comes from outside of us and doesn't affect us. It might affect us enough that we want to change, but it doesn't actually change us. Right? Real change only comes from below. Real change comes from the hard work that we do. I can be inspired to change, which is good, but that doesn't mean anything happened. Very often we let that inspiration dissipate into the ether. So the Aveda had to be from below, and therefore it's tefillah l'meisha. That was one thing the Rebbe does. Then in Ois Ches, the Rebbe said, but really, actually, by virtue of the fact that the Aveda is coming from below, the level of godliness that's drawn down is an even more powerful level. That's what we're trying to understand. Okay? In that context, yesterday we learned about three different. Now, you and I know there are three different levels of light: Mamale, Sovev, Etzem or. Right? Etzem or Ein Sof. Atzmus or Ein Sof is what we're calling it in the mind. Okay? Mamale, the light responsible for, and when you say light, godly energy, right? Light is just a parable for godly energy. It's not light. Light is, particles, waves, whatever it is, both, none, whatever. Light is a physical creation. But it serves as an incredible mashal, incredible parable for godly energy. So we always use it. The godly energy responsible for the existence, I'm not going to touch my cup. I was thinking I should have another table over here just for my cup. Nah, it's too far away. I'll bring I'll get myself one of those little round coffee tables and I'll put my coffee on it and I won't smash it. All right? Izzy said I just need a heavier cup. So if I hit it, it'll move, but it won't fall over. Whatever. Maybe I should get less excited, right? I guess I shouldn't like this Chassidus stuff. I'll just...
As we learned yesterday, I will not show any emotion in class. I will not move my hands.
And then I won't knock over my coffee, but I'll also lose all my students. So I'll sit and drink coffee quietly alone. The three different levels of light. Mamale, light that fills, that is directly responsible for the existence of all of created reality. That's the level of godly light that is imbued in that created kli, that created thing, to give it existence and continued vitality, both. Right? Brings it into existence and also gives it continued vitality. Sovev, an infinite light that's connected to the world to the extent that it, so to speak, surrounds the world. That level of light, though, is too powerful to be expressed in any finite way. The finitude produced by the fact that the light is clothed in a kli, in a vessel, right? You see the pink and light because it hits this. Out here you do not see anything but colorless light that has an infinite ability to express itself in color. Okay? So that's, so to speak, the sovev of it. Right? And then Atzmus Ha'or. And we learned that there are three sources of that in the highest level of light. The first level of light that emerges from the Eibusher. Now, that's extra, right? That's the icing on the cake, and we don't necessarily have to understand that, but we are going to have to understand that a little bit, at least to know those levels exist, in order to appreciate what the Rebbe is going to tell us next. Those levels were Or Hagvul, the light of limitation. The light's not limited. It's the light that serves as the source for limited reality down here. So that's the source of Or Mamale. Or Habilti Gvul, the light that's unlimited, that's the source of Sovev, infinite light. And Etzem Or, the light itself. which is the source of Atzmus Ein Sof. Okay, that's what we saw. So 3 levels which have 2 different expressions. The source of all of it, and then the expression of it all in creation.
Mala is the expression in finite, and Soiva is the expression in infinite.
Indeed.
Definitely.
That is exactly the case. Okay, now, Tess. Rebbe says Tess is exactly what we're trying to deny the Iranians. It's an atomic bomb. Al pize yesh levar ma shekosu b'maimer. Based on this, we can explain what's said in the Maimer. When we say the Maimer, what's the Rebbe referring to? Rebbe Rashab, what year?
Tafresh Samach.
Tafresh Samach. Thank you very much. Right? That's the Maimer we've been learning the whole way through. And that's how the Rebbe learns Maimer. The Rebbe generally is basing his Maimer on previous Rebbe's Maimer.
Rabbi, that was called Tefillah LeMoshe?
I'm sorry, what?
It was called Tefillah LeMoshe?
That Maimer was called Tefillah L'Moshe, yes. Yes. Al pize yesh levar ma shekosu b'maimer. De bahagiluyim shel hamayla. In these levels of revelation above, yesh gimel madregas b'chlalos. There's 3 levels, and this is review. Mamale kolamim, the light that fills all the world. Sovev kolamim, the light that encompasses all the worlds. Right? Again, not that it's not here; it just isn't revealed here because it can't be revealed through kelim. Right? Va'atzmus Ein Sof shelamayla mimamala v'sev, and the essence of Ein Sof, which is beyond mamala Ein Sof. Okay. Ubegimel madregus elu heim gimel ha'ahavos. These 3 levels are they correspond to the 3 different levels of love. Shebapasuk v'yahavta. Say it every day, numerous times. V'yahavta es Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha. And those 3 different levels of Ava correspond to these 3 different levels of godly light. Ha'ava de b'chol levavcha, the love of b'chol levavcha, and I know that means with all your heart, but what does it really mean? Rashi and Chumash, what does it really mean?
2 souls?
2 souls, your 2 hearts. Which 2 hearts? Godly soul and animal soul. Yeah, Rashi says Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Hara, right? So in Chassidus we translate that as godly soul and animal soul. Meaning, V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha is to get your animal soul to love God. The godly soul does. Right? The godly soul loves God like you breathe. There's no effort. It's just a natural thing to do, and it's just who you are. Okay. Whereas the animal soul naturally doesn't love God in any way, shape, or form. Right? The animal soul has to be educated very, very clearly and seriously to appreciate the greatness of God, and then hopefully that gives birth to a love of God. Okay. So that's, what level of light would that be relevant to? Mamala. Nefesh Bahamis, created reality. Yehavta Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha. Ha'avta b'chol levavcha bebechinas mamale kolamim. The cave and shechayus, that since the vitality, the bechinas mamale olam, of the quality of the level of mamale kolamim, the light that fills all the worlds, hu meluvash b'hanivraim b'pnimius, it's meluvash, clothed in the creatures b'pnimius, in an inner way. It's not encompassing them. It's clothed in them. Therefore, it's part of them. Lochein, therefore, al yedeis beininus, through contemplation and meditation, nirgash chayus zeh, it's felt this vitality, gam b'nefesh ba'amis. I can get my nefesh ba'amis to appreciate the fact that its existence also comes from the Eibush. My nefesh ba'amis can appreciate that. Just said it. My nefesh ba'amis just said the words. Right? Because the only reason I can do anything is because my nefesh ba'amis is doing it, because conscious me is doing it, and conscious me can come to a realization that God is great and worthy of my love. And that's b'chol levavcha. Va'ava hi b'chol levavcha b'shnei yitzrecha. That's the language of the Medrash in the Sifri that Rashi quotes on Chumash.
Quick question. How do we spell Atzmus?
Look at the first line on the page, 4th word. be'etzem. Lochein, al yedei izbeinu is nirgish chayah zeh gam b'nefesh habahamis. Va'ava hi b'chol levavcha b'shnei yitzrecho. Even in nefesh habahamis has to come to an appreciation of Elokus. That takes work. It takes education. Ha'ava de b'chol nafshecho, that's going to be seviv. What's that? Hu bebechinas seviv kolami. The cave and has seviv. Hu l'mayla mislav shuz be'elam, is that since this all-encompassing light is beyond being clothed in the worlds. In other words, it's beyond being, what's a lavush? A lavush is a means of expression, right? Machshava, dibur, and ma'aser, the three garments of the soul, the three ways in which the soul expresses itself in conscious reality. Either it's thinking, it's speaking, or it's doing. There's nothing else going on, right? Okay. So when we say something's Lubavitch, we mean it's expressed through. So the Sevev is beyond being expressed in any particular way in the world. It's infinite. In no way, shape, or form does it express itself in any particular way. Lochein, therefore, al yedeshin nirgash beya flawed or insafe. By virtue of the fact that a person can, if in the world, the word the Rebbe used twice already is nirgash. He's sensitive to. Nirgash means to feel, but it means also sensitivity. That he's sensitive to the wonder of Or Ein Sof, the wonder of infinite godly light, and he appreciates the fact that God isn't simply, God is, but he's not simply the source of all existence. There's transcendent levels of godliness that are beyond the world, connected on a certain level, as we've been talking about at length in the minor, but still ultimately beyond the world. So then what? That's Sevev. Ahavasa esavaya, his love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba'ofen the Mesiras Nefesh. His love for Hashem will express itself in Mesiras Nefesh and self-sacrifice. Again, the Mesiras Nefesh we talked about in the beginning of the Maimer, not necessarily willing to give up his life. I mean, yet also this, willing to give up his life for the Eibishter, but not only is he willing to die for God, he's willing to live for God. He wants his life to be an expression of God's will, which is enough is Sevev. Will is Sevev. We've talked about that. Powers of your soul. The mushal from Mamale in you is sight clothed in the eyes, speech clothed in the mouth. What's the mushal for Sevev? Ratzon, tainu, will, pleasure, that you express, that you experience equally in all of your existence. There's no kli for it. So once one comes to this appreciation of the transcendent and infinite aspect of godliness, he'll be willing to give up his life for such a thing, because he realizes that's what's real. B'chol nafshecho, afilu neiteles nafshecho, even if he takes your life. That's Rashi again, based on the Medrash. What does that mean? He wants to go out of his own existence, and be incorporated by Or Ein Sof in the infinite godly light. Okay, which say we were talking about earlier in the Maimer also, the desire of transcendence, and that desire will come from an appreciation of the transcendent level of godliness. If all God is the creator of the world, so then I'm going to give the world a tremendous amount of import. And I might even come to the conclusion that, you know what, it's best to transgress now in order to do more mitzvahs later. Okay, there's such a cheshbon, right? But relative to the level of Sevev, infinite reality, there's no now, there's no later, there's just Elokus, and I don't want to disconnect. I'm not making cheshbenis, I'm making all these calculations based on now, later, up, down. That's all mamala. All there is Elokus.
The called nafshika, it just sounds like the godly soul, like living into the godly soul. So how
that tenua comes dafka from the godly soul. If the Rebbe's going to say it.
So how, we said in Lavaka refers to both, so why, isn't that a little redundant to say that Lavaka refers to the godly soul and the animal soul, now we're saying...
But now we're talking about a different tenua of the godly soul. The first tenua of the godly soul in Kol Lavavcha is the godly soul affecting the animal souls, and the animal soul will behave itself in Elam Hazeh. The second tenu of the godly soul in B'chol Nafshecha is the state of Mesiras Nefesh, the godly soul itself, not in terms of its relationship with the Nefesh Bahamis, but in terms of its relationship with God.
Feel the godly soul. Or sort of
That you all, yeah, that would also be nice. And B'chol,
You said Tanua. Are you talking about the difference between movement?
Tenuah means movement. Tenuah means that. So when you're talking about tenuot in Avodas Hashem, you're talking different expressions of Avodah.
So not referring to the different levels within the nefesh elokus of Baruch Hashem.
No, not necessarily. No, not necessarily. I mean, it might, but not necessarily. In this case, the Rebbe doesn't mention any of that. La'avazu, this level of ava, this level of complete and total devotion to the Eibishter, hirak b'nefesh elokis. That comes from the nefesh elokis. Nefesh Bahamis? No, the Nefesh Bahamis might be the vehicle, I mean, if that's happening in my life, so then it's expressing itself through the Nefesh Bahamis, but it's all Nefesh Elokis. Nefesh Elokis, complete and total devotion to the Eibishter. Okay. And obviously the third level is going to be Atmos Harein. And that, but the Rebbe is first going to explain why. Why is this Nefesh Elokis? Ki asoga, this comprehension, ba'ofen da hakara v'hargosha, in a way of, the hakara is to recognize something, hargosha is to feel it, to be sensitive to it. Sha'az, dafka mevia sogalava, only when a person truly is sensitive to the idea, meaning there's ideas, you can hear an idea, and a person can learn the idea and write the idea down on a piece of paper when he's asked to in a test, but in no way, shape, or form is he sensitive to the true pneumius of the idea. He just knows it in some sort of external intellectual way. Now, this hasoga, this comprehension, in a way in which it becomes part of the person's reality, he's sensitive to the beauty of it. Sha'az dafka, only then when he's sensitive to this idea, mavia sogalava, will this comprehension produce the emotion of ava, because intellect has to be transformed into emotion, which is a huge journey, right? And what does that journey have to go through? It has to go through the most constricted part of the body, right? To get from the head to the heart, you have to go through the neck. What's in the neck? The neck is that place that is so first of all, it's the thinnest part of you, other than your ankles. Right? It's the thinnest part of your main body, and it's also the part of your main body that contains those three things. They're called the three ministers of Mitzrayim, which connect you to the physical world: the air you breathe, the food you drink, your nervous system. The air you breathe, the food you drink, whatever. You do, I guess it's called food, but the food you eat and drink. Right? So it's all going here. It's all here. Okay, so this is the Meitzar. This is the constricted place that makes it hard to get from here to here. All that worldly stuff in the way. Okay, so a person has to contemplate this and comprehend it in such a way that it actually gives birth to love. Va'ava, okay, so that's the second level of love. I'm sorry, finish with, and what's that? Ba'flo. Right? Now skip the brackets, back to the line above. Ki asoga, the comprehension, and the Rebbe explains how that comprehension has to work, but skip they're actually parentheses, right? No, those are brackets. Ki asoga ba'flo darein soif, the comprehension of the wonder of the infinite godly light, yechayla liyos rak b'nefesh elokis. That can only be in the nefesh elokis. Only nefesh elokis can truly appreciate the wonder of infinite reality. Why? Shesharshi b'shem havaya. Because the source of the nefesh elokis is in shem havaya, which is what? The source of seviv, which is seviv. So it can appreciate, you and I down here in Olam Hazeh can appreciate the existence of infinite reality, but since we're so far divorced from it, it's very hard for us to be in awe of it. Right? We are in awe of we often are awestruck by the very powerful beauty and splendor of physical reality. That's something that we, right? I mean, people who stand at Niagara Falls are, wow, this is amazing. The power of this is just beyond belief. Okay, because my Nefesh Abamis is going to be very powerfully affected by impressive finitude. Wow. Look at a view. Right? That's why when you're learning Torah, it's also to look out the window and say, oh, look how beautiful it is out there. Because what are you doing? You're leaving Sevev and you're going to hang out in Mamala. What are you doing? You're sitting here with infinite godliness, and now you're interested in finitude. Right? What does the Mishnah say? Person who's learning Torah and looks out and says, oh, how beautiful this tree is. Mischayev benafshay. What's Pshat Mischayev benafshay? Torah is infinite godly light. What are you doing? Leaving the realm of infinite godly light to look at how nice Mamale looks. But it's a lot easier for us to chop Mamale, right? I mean, you look at the tree, you go, wow. Okay, that's a lot easier for us. Why? Well, it's who we are. Our Nefesh Abamis is down there in Mamale. And an expression of Mamale, so that's easier. It takes a lot of work to get to the point where we'll appreciate something completely transcendent. Right? And where was that? And when we do, what's really beautiful about that, that means that's coming from our Nefesh Elokis, that's coming from our godly soul. It's expressed. If you and I are conscious of that, the Rebbe says you're supposed to feel it, so sensitive to it. If I'm sensitive to it, I'm sensitive in my Nefesh Abamis. But what's the source of that? My Nefesh Elokis. My Nefesh Elokis is shining through my Nefesh Abamis. It's not coming from the Nefesh Abamis. It's such a beautiful thing. The third level of Ava. He knew that was coming. Right? What's that? Because that's completely beyond limitation. Ma'oid means in all of that part of you that you can completely get beyond all of your limitation. In your ma'oid. A lot. Right? What's that? Ki amitis abilti gvul, the true expression of unlimited reality, and this is what we've been learning throughout the whole Maimer. Hu ba'atzmas harein sof is the third level. Because Sevev, as much as Sevev is very impressive and it's infinite, but it's limited to the extent that it's limited to be infinite reality, where Atzmas harein sof, that level of godliness we know is not even limited by being infinite or finite, it's beyond both. And we've said that numerous times, and hopefully that's in there. None of us know what it looks like. We don't know what any of this looks like. Can't draw it. To develop a sensitivity to it. Ki amitis abilti gvul ba'atzmas harein sof. Mashenkin, that's not the case. Or a sevev. Yesh be'ezet shiur v'hagbola. It has a certain description and limitation. What's its description? It's infinite. Now, that's a negative description. It's not finite. Okay, but that's its description. But you can't say that about Atzmas harein sof. It's beyond that. So it has no what's called shiur description. Like surah is a form, right? Litzayer is to draw. So Sevev has, again, this has been talked about in the Maimer. Lochen, and if you have Sevev, what's it called? Or Sevev kol almin. It's defined in terms of almin, in terms of worlds, which are finite. It's the infinite reality that's shaykh to this finite reality. It's not finite, but it's part of the picture, the big picture. As opposed to Atzmas harein sof. To put it in terms of you, Mamale, the powers of your soul that are clothed in the body. Sevev, Ratzon, and Tainug. Different aspects of you that are very, very powerfully you, but so powerful that they're not clothed in any particular limb. They express themselves equally in all the limbs. You can want to do all sorts of things. Speak, hear, look, move. You can experience pleasure from all sorts of different things. Spiritual, intellectual, physical, emotional. Okay. But that still has its shiur. Still has a certain definition. Right? Tainug is different than Ratzon. Okay. And then there's a level of you that just is the essential being of you. It's infinite? No. It can be expressed in your nose. It's finite? No. It can be expressed in your Ratzon. It's just you. Right? Not conscious you. Conscious you is already mamala. Right? Conscious you is what's happening in your head. Just the essential existence of you on some level. Now, the deepest expression of that is the essence of your soul, obviously. Right? But also, even in human terms, just the idea that me, but again, not the me I'm conscious of, just the essential existence of that person. How do you define that? Well, you can't define it, it just is what it is. How does it express itself? Oh, it expresses itself in Ratzon, it expresses itself in Dibur, it expresses itself in infinite, in makiftika things, and it expresses itself, right, all-encompassing things, Ratzon, tiny, it expresses itself in infinite things. Speech, movement, sneezes now and then, blows its nose. It's always amazed at what comes out of its ear. The real you is the essence of your soul. That's really the you that corresponds to Atzmos Ein Sof. Lochein ha'ava shal yadei, after the parentheses. Lochein ha'ava shal yadei gilui Atzmos Ein Sof. Therefore, the love that's a function of the revelation of the essential light of Ein Sof, hu b'chol me'odecha, bli gvul. B'chol me'odecha means beyond limitation. Love God beyond limitation. Beyond the limitation of your animal soul, beyond the limitation of your godly soul, meaning the aspect of your godly soul clothed in your body. Now the Rebbe starts something it's partially unbelievable. What's about to happen, and we have time to do it today, which is good. I was hoping that would be the case. Lochein ha'ava shal yedei gilui al yedei gilui atzmos ein sof hu b'chol me'odecha bli gvul v'la'achrei shemavayer hashaychus. After he explains the Rebbe Shab in his Maimer Tefillah L'Meisha Tafresh Samech. After he explains the relevance of Gimel Ha'aves, the three different levels of love that we express in Kriya Shema, L'Gimel Madregers, and all to the three different levels of light. Messiah, now you have what to think about in Kriya Shema today. Messiah, the Mizeh Muvan Inyan Shel Gimel HaMadregers. From this it's understood the reality. The nature Inyan is like the nature of the matter, the not the matter, the physical matter, but on which matter did he speak, right? Okay? The idea, the concept. So now we can understand that from the three levels of Ava and how they correspond to the three levels of light, that from this we understand the reality of the three levels of light. The mamale umislavish beilemis, that mamale is clothed in the world. The sevev hu l'mayla mislavshus. Sevev is beyond being clothed of al shayich leilemis, but it's relevant to the worlds. V'atzmos ein sof eina begetter eilemis, and atzmos ein sof is not in any way, shape, or form defined by worlds. It's completely transcendent. Now read that line again, because the Rebbe is going to say something very interesting about it. Let's just read it again. I'm not going to tell you what the Rebbe says. I'm just going to read it again. And then when the Rebbe says it, you'll notice it much more powerfully. The Rebbe says like this. After he explains this, Messiah, he concludes. The Rebbe Shab concludes. The Rebbe's quote, he's not quoting verbatim. He's telling us what he says. The mizeh, from this, I guess this means the three ahavos, muvan inyano shel gimel madregos. We understand the nature of these three different levels of light. The mamale hu mislavish beilemis, the mamale is clothed in the world. Sevev is beyond the world, beyond being clothed in the world, but it's relevant to the world. And interesting enough, how do we define infinite reality? Well, we define it in terms of finite reality. It's not finite. Atzmos or Ein Sof, Ein Begetter Eilamus, and that we can't, but it's not infinite. We don't define it in terms of finite. It's completely transcendent. Okay.
So what did you say for the third level?
That it's completely transcendent to the worlds and not defined in any way, shape, or form by the worlds. All right? Okay. Manyen. See what the Rebbe notices about this, and it's really, this is, the next paragraph is absolutely revolutionary in Chassidus. I mean, completely. It's literally an atomic bomb in terms of understanding things. Now the Rebbe just points it out in the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab doesn't say it explicitly. The Rebbe points out, if you read the words carefully, you're going to come to the following conclusion. But Tzarech Lahavin, based on what we just read, we said by understanding the from the Ahavos, you come to understand these three different levels of godly light, and then the Rebbe explains the three levels. So what's the source, and what are we learning too? In that line in the end of the paragraph we just read. What are we learning about? Just in those last two lines.
Each level of light's relationship to the world.
Ah, beautiful. Each level of light and its relationship to the world and what these are. And the Rebbe, the Rebbe, Malay and Seir, as if we don't know this. I mean, we know this. And why are you saying all this again? Where are we learning that from?
Rebbe Rashab.
Yeah, you and I are learning that from the Rebbe Rashab, that's true, but we're learning that from the three levels of Ava. Usually we say the opposite. There's three levels of godly reality, therefore there's three levels of our divine service. Right? Generally, that's what we do. When we define, that's why it's true. I need sort of a foundation, a record, to understand all this, okay. But generally in Chassidus, what do we talk about? We'll talk about a particular mitzvah, okay, we do a particular, whatever we have to do. And then what? We'll say, where's that sourced in godly reality? What level of godly reality are we drawing down as a result of that particular action, and what aspect of godliness is being expressed by that particular action that we're doing down here? So it's full of that. That happens all the time. Okay. Here the Rebbe just said something, he's quoting the Rebbe Rashab, and he's going to notice and make a big deal out of this. The Rebbe Rashab says, how do we understand about these three different levels of godliness? From what we do. Usually we say, how do we understand what we do? From three levels of godliness. Now, you and I, in all fairness, in this minor, what did we start talking about? Three levels of godliness, right? Mamaleh, Seviv, and Atzmasor, right? And we've been talking about that for quite a while, and hopefully that's resonating in there. That you've got that straight. Again, we don't know what it looks like, right? Okay,
I'm sorry, this might be a little off topic, but why does the Rebbe combine both Atzmus and Or stuff together?
Atzmus, and it's not Atzmus and Ein Sof. It's the essence of or Ein Sof. It's not essence and or Ein Sof. It's the essence of or Ein Sof. Different. Okay? It's a good question. We talked about three different levels of light. Learning Chassidus is compared to eating man. Learning Nigla is compared to eating bread. There's lechem min haaretz and there's lechem min hashamayim. What's lechem min haaretz? Learning a page of Gemara. What are you talking about? Reality that I understand very, very well. I know what a sukkah looks like. Right? I know what. Now we're talking about measuring grain. I know what grain looks like. I don't know exactly how they used to do it. Okay, we say it, but I'm not talking about things that I have no experience with. Okay, lechem min haaretz. Lechem min hashamayim, that's man. The manna in the desert. What was interesting about the manna? It had no taste. And whatever taste you wanted, right? But it had no taste per se. So what's taste? The word tam also means reason. Meaning, when you're learning Chassidus, which is lechem min hashamayim, you're dealing with something that's so ethereal, it's very hard to wrap your head around it. You have to develop a certain appreciation of how these ideas fit with each other, but I'm never going to be able to draw it on the board. What does Or Seviv look like? No. What does infinite reality look like? I don't know what infinite reality looks like. I know what finite reality looks like. Right? Okay. And again, you and I do have some gisha, some connection or approach to infinite reality to the extent that we understand there's an infinite amount of spaces, of points in space in this finite space. Okay, we get that. That somehow the universe is infinitely expanding into itself, whatever that means. I mean, I don't know what that means either, but okay, that we can sort of wrap our head around it, right? We have this, sort of somehow that works. I don't know. Okay. Because the light from that star that you see up there, however many millions of light years away, that light is coming here, but it's also going there. It's, so to speak, the back of that star from our vantage point is also emitting light at 186,000 miles per second. Where? I don't know. I'm not sure. Okay, fine. So there's things we have a harder time wrapping our head around, things, but we can still develop the sensitivity and the ability to understand the idea and at least understand them in relationship to each other, and that's what the Rebbe is telling us. So now in this mimer, we spent quite a bit of time explaining these three different levels of light, Mamale, Sevev, and Atzmos, Ein Sof. The last thing the Rebbe just told us in his test was, and that corresponds to these three different levels of Ava. And that's how it usually works in Chassidus. I'll learn about the elokus of it, and then I'll say, and that's expressed in this avodah. That's what we did. Right? B'chol levavcha, mamale. B'chol nafshecha, sevev. B'chol me'adecha, atzmos ein sof. Wow, cool. I mean, we do Kriya Shema every day. That's cool. I like that. I can relate to that. And I assume today, when we say those words, if we are in any way, shape, or form paying any attention to where we are in davening, we'll probably remember what we learned today. We might not, because we might be, who knows where. Can be anywhere. Okay. But if we're somewhat focused on the words in the page, we'll remember that. Oh, yeah, wow. But the Rebbe Rashab said something interesting. By virtue of understanding the three avos, we will understand the three levels of light. Well, the way we did it in this mimer was by virtue of understanding the three levels of light, we'll understand the three levels of ava, right? That's what we did in the mimer. Now the Rebbe is going to say something amazing. Sarach la'avin, the lechu'ura, habir ba'shaychus, the gimel ha'aves, the explanation of the relevance of the three different levels of love that we talk about in Kriya Shema, legimel ha'madreges de lamayla, to the three levels of godliness above, hu la'achrei, that's after Havana Sainyanim the Gimel Madregas. After we've understood these levels of Gimel Madregas, so then we understand the relevance of these three levels of love, which is something we're aware of, to these three levels of godly reality. Okay. That's the way it usually works. Right? Understanding. Havanat. Havana shel. Umehem shechanyonim, but from the order of things in Bahamaimer, mashma, it's understood. The inyan zeh, this idea, shegimel madregas, these three different levels of godly light that we've been talking about, heim gimel avis, they correspond to the three different levels of love that we mentioned in Kriya Shema. So the Rebbe says, the Rebbe Shab says, that's what we just read, Meisif biur, this increases my an explanation, and this, in other words, this increases my understanding, but gimel madregas, in the three levels of godly light. So in other words, we're learning something about these three different levels of godly light from the Aveda of V'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavecha b'chol nafshecha b'chol me'adecha. Generally in Chassidus, and in all, that's how this mimer worked. we'll learn about a very lofty level of godly reality, and then the Rebbeim will say, and you know what? That thing that you do every day, that's expressing this idea that we just understood in godliness, and this is how. And you go, oh, wow. Cool. Just brought it down to my life. But the Rebbe Rashab actually says that by virtue of understanding the three avos, we increase our appreciation of the three different levels of godly light. Not what is generally the case, by virtue of understanding the three different levels of godly light, I reach a greater appreciation of what I'm saying when I say Kriya Shema. Yeah? The difference between what I just said, the first part of what I said and the second part, I'll say it again. The Rebbe Shab seems to be saying as follows. By virtue of understanding the three different levels of Ahava, I reach a deeper understanding of the three levels of godly light. Usually it's the other way around. And in this mimer, it's the other way around. Up until now, what did we learn about? Three different levels of godly light. And then what? That enhanced our understanding of the three different levels of Ahava that we talk about in Kriya Shema. But, are you listening to what's going on? Because I don't want you to live the question, because I'm not going to answer it until I finish. Okay? Because sometimes, and we all do this, right? That we have a question, I'm not listening to what's being said, but, okay? So, that's the Rebbe Shab says, no. By virtue of understanding Ava, I'll understand more about the light. Not by virtue of understanding the light, I'll understand more about Ava. Oh, that's interesting. That seems to be what the Rebbe Shab said. Now the Rebbe is going to say something absolutely astounding based on that. Yes.
My understanding, are we saying that typically we learn Lamayla Lamata?
Okay, you can say it that way.
Here
Yep.
we're learning, or for most of the Mayla we've learned Lamayla Lamata in terms of concepts. Now we're taking from the Gashmis to the Ruchnis, so we're learning.
I wouldn't say Gashmis, we're taking from Aveda.
From Aveda.
Yep.
We're learning Lamata Lamayla.
That's another way of saying the same thing.
Similar to Tefillah Lamayla.
Let's not know drushes. Let's not get into drushes. Let's just understand what the Rebbe said. Right? So the more I decide I want to extrapolate, the less I understand the original idea, and I end up thinking that my extrapolation is what the Rebbe said. It's not. The Rebbe said the core of it. Okay, let's see what the Rebbe says. Vayesh lemer mi habiurim b'zeh. One could say amongst the explanations of this. Now, no footnote. And whenever the Rebbe says that, you know you're going to see something quite astounding, because it's going to be a chiddush of this mimer, and you won't find it anywhere else.
Does he get this from his choice? Like the similar language of Yiddish language that we think about?
Well, everybody, yeah, I guess. I mean, but yeah, the idea of yesh lemer is bechlal.
Okay.
Yes, we see it in Tosfos, but I mean, all the Rishonim use that language to talk about the answer. V'yesh lemer mi habiurim b'zeh. Dahatam al zeh, the reason sheyeshnam l'mayla gimel madregas, that there are above three different levels of light, shebehem nichlolim kol hagiluyim, that in those levels of light are included all levels of revelation, which is synonymous with light. Right? The reason there are these three levels called Mamali Seviv and Atzvus Hareim Sev. Why do three levels of light exist? Who? Ki kol hagiluyim de lamayla, all states of revelation above, all states of godly reality, Hem bishvil avodas ha'adam, are for the sake of the service of people down here in this world. We'll talk about it in a second, but let's see the words first. The cave and Shiva Avos Hashem. And since regarding Avos Hashem, Shehi Ikar Aveda, which is the essence of Aveda, the Leis Pulchana Kapulchana Derachi Musa, there is no service like the service of love. Since relative to love, Yeshnam Gimel Avos, there are three different levels of love. How do we know? Kriya Shema tells us. Moshe Rabbeinu tells us in the second pasuk in Kriya Shema. And what are those levels? Lochein, therefore, since there are three levels of our Avodah called love, therefore, Klolus Kol Giluyim de Lamaila, therefore all the levels of godly revelation above are also Nechlokim Legimel Madregas, are also divided into three levels, each one corresponding to one of the levels of love. What are those three levels? Mamale, V'Sevev, V'Od Ein Seif Shelamayla Misevev. Now translate that, we know what those words are. Shebehetem, that's consistent, Legimel Avis Hana, to the three levels of love. The Rebbe just said something absolutely astounding. It's not that there are three levels of love because there are three levels of godly light. There are three levels of godly light above because you and I have three different levels of expressing our love with the Eibishter. What's the source and what's the result? So in Chassidus everywhere, and in this mimer, we'll say the source is the godly reality that exists. And the result is you and I do A, B, and C. Rebbe says, no. You and I do A, B, and C. Therefore, godly reality looks the way it looks. In order to facilitate the ABC that you and I do. Aleph, Beis, Gimel. Wow. Now if you think about that for a second, based on what we've learned in the Mimer, makes perfect sense. Why did the Eibusha create the world? You know the answer. Okay, we should be partners in Ma'aseh Bereshis. He wants a dir b'tachtonim. He wants a dwelling place in the lower realms, but he doesn't just want a dwelling place in the lower realms. He wants the dwelling place in the lower realms. We brought about by our Avodah. By our Avodah. The Rebbe said that every single time. Our Avodah, our Avodah, our Avodah. But we do down here. Our saying Kriya Shema, right? Okay. So now, what's the source of that desire, so to speak? So, you can't talk about before and after in God, okay? But I mean, we have to because we don't know any other way. So to speak, before the idea of worlds came into, the idea of creating a world came into God's reality, what is there? The essence of God. That's all there is. Is there godly light? No. There's no godly light. Why not? Because godly light only exists by virtue of the fact that God wants it to. And whatever level of godly light exists is an expression of God's will. The only thing that has absolute necessary existence is the essence of God. Everything else exists as a function of God's will.
That's different than Atzmus or Ein Sof.
Atzmus or Ein Sof is not the essence of God. No, it's the essence of the infinite light of God, which is an incredibly powerful level of reality, but it's not the essence of God. And that level doesn't have to exist. It only exists because God wants it to. So why does God want three different levels of light?
Because we have three levels of expressing God.
Because what's he really up there in Atzmus, before anything exists other than just him. And when I say because I mean even godly light doesn't exist. Because godly light, again, is an expression of God's will that there should be a certain energy and revelation of Him called light. That doesn't have to be. That's only because He wants it to be. He can be Meir or not. The sun can only be Meir. It has no choice in the matter. But imagine if the sun could turn on the light or turn off the light. So it doesn't have to give light. It just does. Why? It wants to. Okay, and what if it doesn't want to? So it stops giving light. Does that mean the sun goes out of existence? No, it's just a bunch of densely packed gases burping away up there. Is there any light emanating from it? No, it's not interested in emanating light right now. Now, the sun can't do that. The Eibishter can. Light is light. Every level of reality, the higher that, even those levels of light we were talking about yesterday, we're such big learners of Chassidus, Etzem Ha'or and Or HaGvul and Or HaBilti Gvul and all that. All that. Why does it exist? Because God wants it to. Okay, so now hold on a second. Why does He want it to? Because He has a juke in His head. And what's the juke in His head? Up there in Atzmus, up there in the essence of God, all of a sudden, so to speak, and again, we have to turn it into something that is somehow commensurate to how we experience reality, or else we can't understand it at all. We can't understand it at all, but at least we can talk about it a little bit. Okay, up there in Atzmus, all of a sudden the Eibusher goes, a dir b'tachtonim would be a kick. That would be nice. I have a taiva for dir b'tachtonim. Now, what does that mean? What do I really have a taiva for? You, Ayurveda. So, where's our Ayurveda coming from? Atzmus. Where's that ore emanating out from? Out. But what's the whole purpose of every single level of godly light, the highest, most beyond infinite level of godly light? What's its ultimate purpose? To end up coming down here so that you and I can put on tzitzis. Wow. That means the light looks like it looks because our Aveda looks like it looks, not the other way around. Because the Aveda is coming from Atzmus, and the light's not Atzmus. The light is the revelation of Atzmus, but not Atzmus itself. Just like sunlight is not the sun, it's the revelation of the sun, but it's not the sun. Wow. Uh-huh.
So does that mean that Torah is even higher than Atzmus oriented? Because
No comparison. Torah comes from Atzmus. So do you. Two things are higher than everything else. Torah and Nishmas Yisrael. Okay, what's higher of those two? Nishmas Yisrael. Medrash.
Wait, what's higher than those two?
Of those two, which is higher. Nishmas Yisrael. The Medrash and Bereshis Rabbah, the Rashi quotes on the Chumash says there's base, Reshis, there's two things that are first, Torah of Yisrael. That's Bereshis Rabbah. In Tana Rebbe Eliyahu Navi asks, which of those is higher? Then he uses an interesting language. Eimer Ani, I say Yisrael. Why? Because it says in the Torah, Daber el Bnei Yisrael. The Torah is written to the Jewish people, so it must be there, so to speak. Okay. That's a separate issue. I mean, it isn't here, it's the same, but... So Rebbe just said an unbelievable thing. All different levels of godly reality, no matter how lofty, transcendent, and completely beyond the world they are, they ultimately only exist because the Eibusher wants you and I to say Kriya Shema, put on tefillin, give tzedakah, and be nice to other Jews. Wow. That's a revolutionary idea. Why? Because in Chassidus, and you saw it in this Maimon, we're always talking about this level of godliness, this level, and therefore we understand this level of Aveda. And we always seem to posit the godliness as the source of the Aveda. The Rebbe Rashab hints at the opposite. Doesn't say it explicitly, he hints at it, and the Rebbe says it beferish. It's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Let's finish the paragraph. I'm sorry it's late, but we'll finish the paragraph. The cave in Shavanas Inyan al Gurian. And since understanding this idea completely, while Yadei is by virtue of Mevarim, I say, by explaining it, how do you understand an idea? You understand the source of the idea. Lochein, therefore, Hascholas a beer, the beginning of the beer, Ba'amaimer, Shel Gimel Madregas, the Lamaila of these three different levels of godly light, who Ech Shebehem Hem Gimel Avis, is how in them, so to speak, is the three different levels of light, of love. Because what's the source of the three different levels of love? The three different levels of light? The love. Not the other way around. That's just an unbelievable idea. And it makes perfect sense once you understand. Up there in Atzmus, what was the vision of the Eibusher up there in Atzmus? Ayurveda. Famous Medrash, what convinced the Eibusher to create the world. So the Rebbe explains in famous Mayim Rabbi, so to speak, he saw us doing mitzvahs. He's beyond time. So he watched the movie of us doing mitzvahs. He said, I want that to be. I want that to happen. Bing! Everything that we talked about yesterday. Etzma or a gvul, or a bilti gvul, atzma sorein seved, mamala, yatzilas, bria, yatzira, asiya, all of that comes into being. Why? The Abishah just wants to see a Jew do a mitzvah. Wow. It's just unbelievable. So the Rebbe Shab, first he explains the Ava, and then from that he explains the Gimel Madregas, ki zeu ha-shorish v'asiba lezeh. Because that's the source, shorish, the word source, I assume that's the source of the word source. Ki zeu ha-shorish v'asiba, and the reason, and the cause, lezeh shenim shkul Gimel Madregas, it's drawn down, Gimel Madregas, there's 3 different levels of or. Now, we'll go over this again tomorrow because this is a revolutionary idea. We'll also spend more time. I just was late and I want to make sure that we got to the end. We'll spend a little more time explaining that idea that absolutely everything, the only thing that must exist is the atzmus of the Eibishter, is the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Not atzmus or the etzem of the Eibishter. His essential existence beyond light. That level of existence becomes a ma'or, becomes a luminary, but it doesn't have to, chooses to. Right? And therefore, every single level of reality outside of the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu exists only because God wants it to. It doesn't have a necessary existence. And ultimately, why does God want it to? Because He wants there to be something called the Vedas Adam down here in Elam Hazar. So it ends up coming down to Elam Hazar, but I mean the panemius of it coming down to Elam Hazar is because He wants us to be able to serve Him. And that service is already a vision of what that service is, so to speak, up there in Asmus. And so that everything that's happening on every single level of reality, even the level of infinite godly light that's so far beyond the world, there's no connection whatsoever. Everything exists in order to facilitate the Aveda of you and I down here, that we should put on tefillin, and we should say Kriya Shema, and we should give tzedakah, and we should not eat pork, and we should eat matzah and stay away from chametz and pesach. All of it. Everything that exists on any level of reality only exists so that'll be. And if you look at that, you'll understand that, not the other way around. That is a revolutionary thought in Chassidus. It's pashut once you hear it. But our generation is completely used to this, because this is just the way the Rebbe talks to us all the time. Say that, but I mean that diuk in the Rebbe Shab, you don't find this. No one says this explicitly. It's out there, but no one says it. And again, our minor, explaining different levels of godly reality, and then and that's Gimel Avos. That's what Avos Hashem is about. No, we should have started talking about Avos Hashem, and then gone to but the Rebbe says, well, that's really what the Rebbe Shab does. That's why he does it. Okay.
Thanks.